begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, today is, as usual, Srimad Bhagavatam class. You can hear me, by the way?
Yeah, we can hear you.
What's that?
We can, yes.
Okay, all right. So this is the verse today, chapter 10, Canto 10, chapter 6, verse 18, and 19 and 20. So let's go over the word for word. A lot of these words are really kind of simple, like the first word, Yashoda, right? And Rohini Byam. So with Mother Yashoda and Mother Rohini, who principally took charge of the child. Saha means the other gopis, so there are other gopis involved as well. Samam, equally as important as Yashoda and Rohini. Like we say, Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu, Krishna is equal to all living entities. So Samam means that equality. Balasya, of the child, like Bal Krishna, Bala means child. Sarvata, from all dangers. Raksham, protection, like we say, Rakshishyatiti Vishvaso, that to always think of Krishna as my protector. Vidhadhire, executed. Samyak, completely. Gopucha Pramana Adibhi, by waving around the switch of a cow. So anyone who knows about cows here, I'm assuming the switch is the tail of the cow. I can't think of anything else you wave around of the cow, but if anyone knows more about this, please put it in the chat or go off of mute and let us know. Sometimes it's hard to translate, Sanskrit words into English. So here's the translation purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thereafter, Mother Yashoda and Rohini, along with the other elderly gopis, waved about the switch of a cow to give full protection to the child Sri Krishna. Srila Prabhupada's purport. When Krishna was saved from such a great danger, Mother Yashoda and Rohini were principally concerned, and the other elderly gopis, who were almost equally concerned, followed the activities of Mother Yashoda and Rohini. Here we find that in household affairs, ladies could take charge of protecting a child simply by taking help from a cow. And then the rest of the purport, Prabhupada switches everything to be about cows. As described here, they knew how to wave about the switch of a cow so as to protect the child from all types of danger. There are so many facilities afforded by cow protection, but people have forgotten these arts. The importance of protecting cows is therefore stressed by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Rishi Goraksha Vaniyam Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam. Even now in the Indian villages surrounding Vrindavan, the villagers live happily simply by giving protection to the cow. They keep cow dung very carefully and dry it to use as fuel. They keep a sufficient stock of grains, and by grain, so probably bulls till the field, oxen till the field, and that creates grain. So that's the connection. Otherwise, what's the connection between cows and grains? They keep a sufficient stock of grains, and because of giving protection to the cows, they have sufficient milk and milk products to solve all economic problems. Simply by giving protection to the cows, the villagers live so peacefully. Even the urine and stool of cows have medicinal value. And then I was asked to read 20 also. The child was thoroughly washed with cow urine and then smeared with the dust raised from the movements of the cows. Then the different names of the Lord were applied with cow dung on 12 parts of his body, beginning with the forehead, as done as in applying tilak. In this way, the child was given protection. Now, Henry has said the switch of a cow, perhaps the stick cowherds direct the cows. I am not sure. So when I, well, first I'll tell you a quick story, and then I'll tell you about how we're going to cover this class. So we lived in Vrindavan, and we would visit America every year. And so one summer we went with my brother, my wife and my son, and my brother and his wife and his two children to a national park in the DC area. And one of the exhibits was about milking cows, and they would allow visitors to come and milk the cows. So the park ranger called my son over and said, can you do it? And my son, walked up, and he immediately knew exactly how to milk the cow. He was born in Vrindavan. He was raised in Vrindavan. We lived near the Goshala. He knew how to milk a cow. and the park ranger said, what's your name? And he said, Gopinath. And the park, he said, then of course you know how to milk a cow. Your name is Gopinath, the Lord of the Gopis. And we were like, what? This is a park ranger. And he said, my name's Arjuna Das. And he was a disciple of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So that has nothing much to do with the class today, but it's always good to start with a story. And it's kind of connected with cows, so I thought that was okay. But there are a number of, when I read this purport, and they said, okay, they asked me to speak about cows. Boy, that's a tough one for me. So I thought of 4 different things to talk about in class today. We'll see if we have time to cover them all. But 1, what I know about cows. 2, what we learn about cows from Shastra. And 3, what happens if you don't know a lot about something in Krishna consciousness? What are you supposed to do? Or it's not your thing, so to speak, And maybe something about, if we have time, about rituals in the world, in Krishna consciousness, and the switch of a cow, and is that a spiritual thing, and topics such as that. So I hope you have your seatbelts on, because it's a lot to cover. So what do I know about cows? Very little. I would say my realizations are quite shallow. This is what I do know. When I'm around them, I feel peaceful. If I was really absorbed in management headaches, I would walk in Vrindavan, I would walk to the Goshala and just hang out with the cows. And even here in Washington, I'm not in Washington right now, but when I am in Washington, we have 2 cows, Gita and Vani. And I would hop the fence, which you're not supposed to do. Don't tell my wife, the temple president. And I would hang out with Gita and Vani. And just by being with them, I felt peaceful. How to worship cows. I learned this by being in Vrindavan. You should feed them a little grass. You should rub them under the neck and then circumambulate them. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that's how you can worship a cow. So really easy. You don't need a whole RT paraphernalia. Just a little grass, your hand, and your legs to walk around them. Not everyone would agree with this, but I really like the smell of being around cows, and of course the cow dung and all that. And I just kind of like the smell. So that's one thing I know. And I know a little bit about Gita and Vani. They are the best, I would say they're the best taken care of cows in all of North America. And I say that because we have a connection with an organic market. And so they donate. So the cows only eat organic vegetables and things from the market. So I mean, how many cows get organic food every day? And they're taken care of by 2 devotees. And one of the devotees' names just happens to be Gopal. So, go figure, right? Krishna's arrangement. Also, let's see, I pay more money for ahimsa milk. That's one thing I know about cows, because every week a devotee, usually it's my wife, they drive from Washington, D.C. to Gita Nagari to pick up a whole van load of ahimsa milk. So I know that about them. And I've seen that anyone who actually takes care of cows as their service has huge realizations about the benefits of cows, about Krishna's connection with cows, about about the personality of cows. They have the amazing realization. I remember Komarupa Prabhu in Vrindavan, talked to him about cows, and he could talk all day, or the devotees in Gitanagari, etc. So huge realizations for taking care of them. And the only other thing I know about it, I can do a reasonably good imitation. Anyway, that's all I know. I don't know a lot about cows. But what we learn about cows, well, here's one thing. One thing is that they are Krishna's way of maintaining human beings. And Prabhupada writes, actually, as I have already discussed in my Srimad Bhagavatam, I think this is a conversation actually. For economic problem, one requires a little land and a few cows. Then the whole economic problem is solved. So, we look at that and we think, wait a second, health insurance, rent, groceries, car insurance, schooling, we think, are you kidding? But the whole economic problem is solved. We should use our time. And this was actually Prabhupada's idea for those who were not full-time, shares of Krishna consciousness, doing outreach full-time, that why live in the cities? Why not go out to our farm communities? And of course, we know why not right now. They're not yet developed. But why not go out to their farm communities, live a simple life, and think of Krishna? So we should use our time for elevating ourselves in Krishna consciousness than for so-called economic development. If we are satisfied with plain living, and that's a big question, right? Not every, how many of us could actually move to a farm and be satisfied in that way? If we are satisfied with plain living, with minimum time, and the balanced time is engaged in elevating our Krishna conscious program, then every man can be transferred to the Loka Vrindavan just in this very life. The modern civilization has encumbered the mode of living, and people are engaged all the time in the matter of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. So this was Prabhupada's plan for saving us from working in the cities. He said, that is our mission, cow protection and agriculture. And if there's excess, then trade. This is a no-profit scheme. For the agriculture, we want to produce our own food, and we want to keep cows for our own milk. Okay, so let me look at the chat here. It's just any questions or comments so far? Because I'm going from like one section to the next. Anyone want?
Is that true that cow milk strengthens one's intelligence?
Yes. And what time? Because sometimes you get buffalo milk in India, and I was told many times that Prabhupada once joked, buffalo milk creates buffalo brain. Although Krishna had buffalo yogurt in spiritual world, or in his manifest time here in this planet. But yes, milk is. He also said it's the miracle food for children and older people. So I'm really starting to get into milk now, since I'm definitely getting older. Yes, it's meant to nourish the brain. Yeah. Anything else so far? Okay.
How does cow protection apply to someone who lives in New York City, for example?
How does cow protection apply? Well, they could somehow try to benefit places like Gitanagari that are really trying to be an ideal agrarian program, or New Vrindavan. That's one way. For years, Gitanagari used to have that cow program, things like that, and also speak to people about cows. And I don't know if it's practical for a place like New York, because I think it's about a 5-hour drive to Gitanagari to get the milk. We for us, it's 2.5 hours. So my wife says it's the best time of her whole week driving out to Gitanagari. She can be peaceful. She's not managing the temple. She just can think about things and hear a lecture or something like that, and then hang out with the cows. and then go back and think about Krishna more. So it's like her favorite time of the whole, and it's kind of, hey, she's going out to get the ahimsa milk for the deities. Because the deity, that's another thing, if it's possible. I don't know if it's practical, but if it is practical to Sri Radha Madan Mohan in Washington, D.C., they only get milk products from the cows. So how's that? I see someone else has their hand up in the Bhakti Center. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, of course, this is just a reflection. You already said this, but the best thing that we focus on is that how wonderful is Krishna, that he's providing a way to live in this world, that it's actually a wonderful, complete arrangement.
Yeah.
My own experience, milking cows every day, taking care of the oxen, that it works. It's not just theoretical. Now, the Bhagavatam says that this literature is meant to bring about a revolution in the impious life of this world's misdirected civilization. So in the 1940s, about 87% of the people in this country had a piece of land, grew most of their own food, right, and lived in the countryside. But now it's down to like 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
So in just a few decades, with the modes of passion and ignorance become so strong that people can't live in a peaceful arrangement. They're disturbed, and they gravitated to the city for distraction. And our experience was living at Vrindavan. People would come from places like New York. Guests would come, and if they were there for 1 or 2 days, they were, when are we going back to New York? They couldn't handle the fact that there wasn't all this other stuff going on.
Yes.
It's a quality of life. And Prabhupada said, without the spiritual foundation, without the Krishna consciousness, then people drift away from being satisfied just to worship and to live in a simple way. And their senses drag them to the passionate atmosphere, a place like New York City.
Thank you. Yeah. And I can see that I'm really attracted to the mode of passion. As you might be able to see, I'm staying in Kushtuba Prabhu's apartment on 71st Street. And I was telling my wife yesterday, I know this isn't spiritual, but somehow or other, I love New York. And I think if I hang out at Gita Nagari too long, I'm like, what do you do here? Of course, I could probably, pick up books and read. And I want to get to that. That's the next part of the class. But I do see there's a few hands. Angelika, please, your hand is up.
Yes, Hare Krishna. This is a short comment. I lived at Gita Nagari for some time, and my greatest realization was actually witnessing how there is this shift that happens when one interacts with cows, especially people who are like not raised around cows and are from a city. And usually I also found that the most beautiful and surprising was just really coming to this understanding that cow is a sentient being, and she has feelings and can feel how she's taken care of. And especially at Gita Nagari, I haven't been to any other cow protection centers, but there are so many cows there that like haven't had a baby in a long time, and they are producing so much milk just because they're taken care of with so much love. So that's just a small comment, but I just find that this in itself can be such a shift in consciousness to really realize like this is another soul, and it also feels, and it also picks up what is in the environment and how it is approached and what is the intention of the approach. So that's a lot to learn even from that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I've seen when Gopal drives up in his car towards the temple, Gita and Vani go crazy. They start mooing, and they're just like pacing back and forth. They're so happy to see Gopal's car, and when they see me, they're just like, whatever. But when they see Gopal, because that relationship is there. Yes, Bhakti Center. You're on mute.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So I was looking up the Sanskrit word for word, and the word Gopucha means it's translated like 3 other times in the Bhagavatam, and it means tail. It means a cow tail.
Okay.
But I'm confused about Mother Yashoda and Rohini's reaction to seeing Krishna. What were they hoping to accomplish? What was the significance of them waving a cow's tail? What does that look like? And then why do they immediately just smear him with cow urine instead of picking him up and I don't know. It seems like a strange first reaction to me.
Well, you'd have to ask Mother Yashoda that question about why she does that. I don't know for sure, but this was actually going to be the 4th part of the class, which I doubt we're going to get to, but so I'll just maybe cover it briefly. Is that there's certain rituals that have meaning and are very, sometimes at very deep meanings, and certainly we would think that anything Mother Yashoda does has very deep meanings. And then there's others that we just kind of pick up. The example that's given is the cat in the basket at a wedding, right? So to make a long story short, there was a priest, a Vedic priest, who was teaching his students how to do the ritual, and there was a cat running around the wedding. So he said, catch that cat and put him in a basket in the corner so he doesn't bother the wedding. And then the wedding goes on, and the students are all taking notes. Okay, this is how you do the fire sacrifices, that. And then it was one of them put the cat in the basket, in the corner. And so when it came time for the student to perform the weddings, he said, "Oh, wait, we have to find a cat first and put it in a basket. That's an important part of the ceremony." So some things can be like that, and sometimes knowing what has deep and what doesn't is tricky. When we grew up in Vrindavan, all the local ladies told my wife, "You have to put a black dot on the left side of your son's forehead to protect him from people who might be envious or things like that." Okay, whatever. We didn't know that much. I'm trying to think of there's other things such as that. In India, you eat with your right hand only, not with your left hand. And some people are like, why is it? Well, there's a reason for that, right? The left hand is considered what you use to clean yourself in the bathroom, and the right hand for. I remember one time I gave Bhakti truma or something with my left hand, and he said, "Vraj, Vihari, give that in the right hand." Or Bhima Prabhu, who is married to Prabhupada's niece. I remember one time I was walking with him, and I sneezed as we were walking out the door, and he said, "Oh, you have to go back inside and chant the Mahamantra 3 times. You can't go out. You can't, that's inauspicious." Right? Or I would see taxi drivers in Vrindavan. If a cat ran across their path, they would stop the car and they would back up a few inches and then go and say, no, it's very inauspicious. So knowing what's like just a less unimportant ritual and what is actually have meaning, sometimes it's not so easy to decipher that. And therefore, let me see, I have this verse. This is a beautiful verse that kind of, from a bhakti point of view, from our point of view as practitioners, helps us think things clearly. I hope you can see that. Smartavya satam vishnur vismartavyo najatuchit sarva vidi nisedhasur etayor eva kinkaram. Lord Vishnu or Krishna should always be remembered and never forgotten at any time. All the rules, sarva vidhi, all the rules and regulations, all the rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastra, and what to speak of things that you're not sure are in the Shastra, right, should be servants of these 2 principles. So even if we mistakenly put something, put chapati in our mouth with our left hand or this or that, not that, that the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And that's so good, especially for us practicing bhakti in the West, that sometimes you can get so caught up in the vidhis and nishedas, the do's and don'ts, that you, and sometimes even proud of them. And then you forget the whole thing. This is also mentioned in the Nectar of Instruction, Upadek Shamrita, as niyamagraha and niyamagraha. Following the rules just for the sake of following them without the desire to make advancement, or thinking the rules just aren't important. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. And we try to avoid both, but we try to follow Krishna consciousness nicely with a very specific purpose. The purpose of loving Krishna. So that's, I've always found that really helpful for me. If I find myself getting too caught up in the rules, or like, oh, I am from Vrindavan, I know so many things. You guys in the West, I used to have this mentality. In the way, you do things in such a bogus way. I remember I was a young devotee, yeah, and I came back from Vrindavan. This is before I lived there, but so I was told the devotees, no, we can't serve out prasadam like like a buffet. Everyone should sit down in rows. And so somehow the temple president agreed to my insistency that no, this is the Vedic way to serve prasadam. And what ended up doing is we ended up, the Fisher Mansion was the temple in Detroit with this, everything so beautiful. We ended up starting to scratch the beautiful marble on the temple floor by the serving containers. And so I was like, okay, we're going back to buffet, because we have to be practical. And this is a little connected to the last point that I wanted to make. And that is that, okay, because I was thinking to myself, what do I do? I'm obviously, theoretically, I accept cows are really important. And one last thing about cows, if I can, before I go on to that point, if my computer is going to cooperate, which it's not doing right now. Oh, there we go. And then, here we go. Just a few things more about what the Shastra says about cows. So the cow, the spirit in the spiritual world, the cow is the Kamadhenu, a wish-fulfilling cow, also known as Surabhi, and they're considered the mothers of all creation. And the cows are the mothers of the 33 million demigods. And Krishna, he used to, call the cows. His Nanda Maharaj had 900,000 cows. Now you could say, come on, give me a break. But I don't know if you've seen the pictures from the ones that were just released yesterday from the new telescope about the universe, and you just see all these millions, if not billions, of planets. So 900,000 cows is not a big deal compared to like what you see there. So, and Krishna had divided them into 25 divisions, and he would say things like, "Hey, Davali," and that's the name of the white cows, and all the white cows would come forward. Right? And then he had other groups like Hamsi, Chandani, Kanga, Mukha, and he would call them. And if one didn't show up, he knew. He had like a japa beads of which, counter beads of which cows were there. And if one was missing, or if a group was missing, he immediately knew that, and he would take care of them. And Radha also had her cows. They were called Sunanda, Yamuna, Bahula. Those were the three most important Surabhi cows. So there's a whole cow thing going on in Goloka Vrindavan. Yeah. So now back to my preparing for the class today. I was kind of thinking, I'm such a loser. I don't know that much about cows. I've been practicing devotee for so many decades, and it's just maybe I should really get to know about cows. And then I heard a class recently by Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj about the structure of the Bhagavatam. I said, I should become like Maharaj and just really get absorbed in studying the Bhagavatam. And I often read Satchidananda Maharaj's book, The Living Name. I think, I should just get absorbed in chanting. I should just chant extra rounds, and I should retire from work and get absorbed in chanting Krishna's name. And not too long ago, I gave pre-pandemic, there was a Pujari training for Pujaris all around North America in New Vrindavan. And I was asked to go there to talk about conflict resolution because head Pujaris often have to deal with conflicts. But I was listening to their presentations. I said, oh, I should really take up Pujari work. This is so important and so purifying. And even other things that aren't full on, the 5 most potent items of bhakti. I hear Raghunath and Kashtubha doing this great, wisdom of the sage. I should do a podcast. So in this way, I'm kind of like that. I can get all over the place. I should do this. I should do that. And then I remembered that in the Nectar of Devotion, it talks about Ekanga Bhakti and Anekanga Bhakti, which means where Rupa Goswami is delineating the 9 processes of bhakti, and then also in the 64 items, 5 are most important: chanting the holy name, living in a holy place, associating with devotees, worshiping the deity, and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And then I was thinking what Rupa Goswami said. Ekanga means you can just focus on one aspect of bhakti. Anekanga means you can spread that out to more. So Prabhupada spoke this, that whether you perform all 9 processes or some of them or only one of them, you can progress in spiritual life. For example, when a Christian or a Muslim offers prayers, his service is as good as the Hindu service to the deity in the temple. God is within. And when he sees that we are sincerely serving him, he takes charge and gives us directions by which we can swiftly approach him. God is complete in himself. He is not hankering after our service. But if we offer him service, we can be purified. So again, that Ekanga Bhakti. And this is also mentioned in the 14th chapter of the Nectar of Devotion, that this point about one can concentrate primarily just on one of these main items of bhakti or all of them equally. So then I felt a little reassurance. Okay, I'm not a cow expert, but I could focus on other things. I could get absorbed in the Bhagavatam, or I could get absorbed in chanting. And for all of us, it's really I would say Ekanga, or maybe Do-Kanga. But it's really helpful for us as sadhakas, as practicing devotees, to find where we really have an attraction, where we really have a taste, and you fan that. And this is even in the outside world. I work for the government, and I do a lot of facilitation, team building, things of that nature, and of course conflict resolution. And there's something called Strength Finders, where you take this exam, kind of like a Myers-Briggs or a Enneagram, and you find what your strength is. And the idea is that, let's say your child comes home with 3 A's and a C. The tendency is to get them a tutor for that C so they can come up. But they say, no, don't do that. Forget about the C. Get a tutor for the A's so they can really, and that's kind of like what really, excel in those things. That's kind of like what Varnashrama is. You find what you're good at, you find out what your God-given expertise is, and you do that for Krishna. That's, and then in terms of strictly bhakti, which is transcendental to Varnashram, you find what really attracts you and really get into that, really focus on it, really get absorbed in it as much as you can. If you love to read the Bhagavatam, really study the Bhagavatam and read books that talk about the structure of the Bhagavatam, and maybe hear Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj's classes or Gurujam Prabhu's books on the overview, or read about what Prabhupada said about the holy name. And and there's so many, Mahatma Prabhu's japa affirmations, and Satchidananda Maharaj's books on the holy name, et cetera, and fan that spark so it becomes a blazing fire. So I felt a little better. Okay, I know I should love cows, and I'd like to hang out with Gita and Vani, but I'm probably not going to be like, at, any time in this life, moving to Gitanagari and milking the cows, as my main gig, although I could go there sometimes and learn how to do it. So, go for the A's. Go for the A's. And I think that's a really important concept to meditate on in our bhakti. So there's some time for comments, questions. I know I speak fast. I'm from around here. Now, you had all these comments and questions about cows. Then we talk about bhakti. Okay. Yes. Yes, Anzalika.
Hare Krishna. What comes to me simply as a reflection to go for the ace is the verse in the Gita saying that it's better to do one's own dharma and duty imperfectly than to do someone else's perfectly.
Yes. Now that's talking about varnashrama, and that's nice. That's often about our conditional nature. But I think Krishna gives us inspiration in some aspect of bhakti, and it may be connected to our nature. So thank you for that. Yes. Someone in the Bhakti Center?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Boo.
Yeah, Evan was asking a very good question about Mother Jasoda's activity. She was using the switch. So we know whatever Mother Jasoda does is because she loves Krishna.
Right.
So on one hand, she's protecting Krishna from, if you've seen little children, they're always into something that's maybe precarious, or maybe he's getting in the cow's way. So she's moving the cows away from Krishna to protect him or to protect the cows from Krishna. That's one thing. And then on the other hand, bathing with cow urine, which seems very strange. In my own experience, when I first went to New Vrindavan in 1974, there's a devotee named Taru. Do you remember Taru?
No.
He was initiated with Radhanath Swami. So I went in the barn, and all the cows were lined up, and devotees were milking them. And the cows started passing urine. And I said to the devotee who was showing me the barn, I said, why don't they turn the cows around? Isn't that kind of gross? Like the urine is coming out right where you're coming in the barn. And then Taru was milking the cow. So he took his head and he put it under the cow urine flow. And I was like, ow, what is he doing? And then the devotee said, see, the urine of the cow, Krishna's arrangement, is purifying. And then another cow, this is realization by direct experience, another cow was passing urine. He said, put your hands under here. And so I put my hands there and the cow urine came on my hands and I was like, oh my God. It's warm and it's not dirty. It's pure, it's purifying, it's sanctifying. And my realization was, that the cow is a sacred arrangement by Krishna, and so they bathed the deity. We bathed the deity with cow urine, cow dung, scented water, flowered water, different things. And it's not just an empty ritual. You made a good point about how sometimes we forget why we're doing something. But this is like wonderful, just wonderful, beyond logic. They say that a bone is dirty, but the conch shell, which is a bone, is pure. That stool is dirty, but the stool of the cow is completely antiseptic and purifying. And you first hear that and you think, well, how could that be? But it's a fact. My own hearing about it and then directly perceiving it, even it has medicinal effects. Sometimes people drink the cow urine. Okay, I'll say it, maybe saying too much, but he asked a good question.
Thank you, and
she does it because she loves him.
It reminded me, Adi Prabhu, that when I lived in Vrindavan, we instead of painting the walls in our house, we lined them with cow dung, and they keep the mosquitoes out, and also it's a beautiful light brownish color, And so one time, Kushtuba Prabhu was coming to my house to teach some of the devotees in Mumbai how to make pizzas, and Radhanath Swami came, and he saw the cow dung walls, and he got so inspired that his room in Mumbai, he put cow dung on the wall. So yes, and I really like your other point that yes, anything Mother Yashoda did, the main thing was that she did it with bhakti, and that should be true we should follow we should be rag anugas. We should follow in the footsteps of the ragatmikas, those who have great love. So thank you for that.
Vraj, Vihari Prabhu, while you're at Kaustuba Prabhu's apartment, you should go for it and cover the walls with
yes, keep the Priya, surprise. Which comes back.
Yeah. There's a question in the temple room.
This room is so clean that I've been afraid to even breathe in this place because she keeps it so spotlessly clean. Yes, temple room, G.
Yes, I was just curious about the reference the Prabhupada quote. Where can I find that about Anak Anga Bhakti and Ek Anga?
The end of chapter 14 of the Nectar of Devotion.
Okay.
It's Rupa Goswami and Prabhupada's it's in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Prabhupada is translating it right at the end of the 14th chapter, which is right at the end of the section on Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Then 15 begins Raganuga Bhakti. So the first 3 chapters are general Bhakti, and then from I think it's 3 or 4 up to 14 is Vaidhi Sadhana, then 15 and 16 is Raganuga Sadhana, then 17 and 18 is Bhava Bhakti, and 19 is Prema Bhakti. That might have been too much.
Can you explain it in simple terms? Is it that following the rules and regulations will bring us to this spontaneous level, or if you just focused on the rules, you're not going to get anywhere, and spontaneous bhakti is not dependent on anything? How does that work? How does that correlate, these two? I know it's a big subject.
Yeah, well, that's like,
maybe
in 3
in simple
minutes.
terms.
But translating things into rules and regulations, it sounds pretty dry in English, doesn't it? It sounds like, oh God, rules and regulations. It sounds like something you learn when you take driver's ed, something like that, right? But the rules, the regulations, or the sadhana, the practice of Vaidhi, of following specifically following the instructions of the spiritual master, we do them with a heart, with bhakti, and that all those, the Bhagavatam is read with the devotional. Everything we do is supposed to be done with the devotion. It's practicing bhakti, so that slowly it becomes spontaneous. And Prabhupada would often talk about spontaneous devotional service in a very practical. So there are, and certainly there's not time for it today, there are some details about Raganuga Bhakti, which I already mentioned. It's very simple in one sense. It's anuga, to follow in the footsteps of those who have rag. And those who have rag, which means incredible attachment, are the residents of Vrindavan, like the gopis and the manjaris and the cowherd boys. So that's the specific part. But Prabhupada's very kind of down to earth practical thing is, you spontaneously want to serve, just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur said. When I hear the mridanga and the kirtan, I want to join the kirtan. I want to run towards the kirtan. So that Prabhupada would consider, spontaneous, or the alarm goes off and it's like, oh God, zoom, snooze 5 minutes, 5 more minutes, instead of, when we wake up in the morning, here's a ritual, but it's a spiritual. We're supposed to call out the names of our deities. First thing we do, Jai, Sisi Gornitai, Krishna Balaram, Radhashama Sundar Ki Jai, and then pay obeisances, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya. That's the first thing we're supposed to do when we wake up. So if we wake up in the morning and say, wow, another day in Krishna consciousness, I get to serve Krishna, Hari Bol. That's spontaneous in the very simple concept. For me, it's like, oh, okay, now it's another day. Do I want to serve Krishna? And I think about it a little bit, but spontaneous is like that. So there's spontaneity on the simple level, and then there's some very detailed spontaneity, which again is mentioned in the 15th and 16th chapter of the Nectar of Devotion. I think our time is up, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much. Granta Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Vraj Vihari Prabhu Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Tune back in tomorrow. It's every day. That's Srila Prabhupada's gift. He gave us something to do every day. Right? Henry Prabhu is relating, yeah. And I was thinking this morning, that's all we've got. That's our life expectancy, one day. That's it. Okay, Hare Krishna. Love you. Love you.
Thanks so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.